Whispering Pines was my favorite spot in the world. It was a quiet, peaceful forest where I'd camped many times before. The tall trees reached up to the sky, their leaves whispering softly when the wind blew. This place felt like home, filled with happy memories of camping with my dad. This time, I was here alone. Dad had passed away last year, and coming back to this forest was my way of remembering him, of feeling close to him again. We used to set up our tent right here, cook meals over the campfire, and tell stories under the stars. I missed those times, but being here made me feel less alone, like he was still with me in some way. I set up my tent in our usual spot, the familiar sounds of the forest around me. The crackling of the fire and the chirping of the crickets at night made me feel safe and happy. During the day, the sunlight peeked through the tall trees, and everything looked bright and welcoming. This trip was my chance to say goodbye, to have one last adventure in the place we loved most. I wanted to relive those happy memories and create new ones, even if it was just me this time. Getting the camp set up felt good, like I was keeping a promise to myself and to Dad's memory. The days were filled with the usual camping routines, collecting firewood, making sure the fire pit was ready for the evening, and preparing simple meals with the canned goods I brought along. I tried fishing in the nearby creek, something Dad and I always did together, but it wasn't the same doing it alone. During the day, I'd hike the familiar trails we used to explore, but the woods seemed quieter now, almost too quiet. The birds and usual rustle of wildlife were sporadic, as if the forest was holding its breath. I found myself constantly looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see Dad there with his big, reassuring grin, telling me there was nothing to worry about. But as the week went on, small, unsettling things began to add up. I'd return from a hike to find small, odd piles of twigs near my tent, arranged in patterns that didn't look random. My first thought was maybe other hikers were playing a prank, but I hadn't seen anyone else since I arrived. Then there were the marks on the trees, scratches that seemed too deliberate, forming shapes I couldn't quite understand. They weren't there the day before, I was sure of it. I touched the marks, feeling a chill as I traced the strange patterns with my fingers, wondering who or what had made them. Every evening when the sun went down, I started feeling nervous. The whispering sounds at night got louder, like someone was talking somewhere nearby. I kept thinking it was just the wind, or maybe I was imagining things because I was out here by myself. But I really felt like someone was watching me, like I wasn't all alone. By the time the fire was crackling and the stars began to peek through the twilight, my sense of adventure was replaced by a nagging apprehension. I kept glancing into the darkening woods, half expecting something to emerge from the shadows. The isolation of the forest, once comforting, now felt oppressive, as if the very air was thick with unspoken warnings. The night everything changed. The whispers weren't just background noise anymore. They were loud and clear. It felt like they were calling out to me. Heart pounding, I stepped out of the tent to figure out what was going on. That's when I saw him. A man, just a shadow at first, standing at the edge of my campsite. He looked wild, his eyes wide as if he heard things no one else could. He started talking crazy, saying the forest was alive and spoke to him, and now he believed it wanted us to stay there forever. I realized this guy had been messing with my stuff, trying to scare me, to make me hear the whispers too. He stepped closer, ranting about the voices and how I must hear them too. It was so eerie, like he was lost in his own world but determined to pull me into it. I knew I had to deal with him, to stop this madness before it could escalate. My mind raced, looking for a way out. The fire was still burning, bright and hot. On impulse, I grabbed a stick, set it ablaze, and waved it threateningly, hoping to scare him off. But he just laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the trees. It became clear he wasn't just a harmless hermit. There was a dangerous glint in his eye, a mix of desperation and madness. He didn't come to take anything. He came because he was sure the forest wanted us to answer and obey its secret commands. Seeing my distraction, he tried to grab the flaming branch. I pulled away and, With courage I did not know I had, I shoved him hard. He stumbled backward, surprise and rage flashing across his face. For a moment, he looked like he might charge at me again, but I stood my ground, holding the fiery branch like a torch, my heart racing. Then, using the firelight to my advantage, I kicked dirt onto our campfire, sending a cloud of smoke and sparks into his face, momentarily blinding him. Seizing the chance, I grabbed my backpack with one hand, keeping the lit branch in the other, and ran. I could hear him coughing and sputtering behind me, trying to follow, but I didn't look back. I just ran, fueled by a primal urge to escape, shouting for help with all the breath I had left. The woods blurred past me as I sprinted, every shadow and rustle magnifying my fear. But I didn't stop, didn't dare slow down, driven by the desperate hope of finding a way out, of putting as much distance as possible between me and the madman lost to the forest's deceiving whispers. After I pushed him and ran away, I kept going until the sky started to get light. My legs hurt, and I was out of breath, but I was too scared to stop. Once I couldn't hear him anymore, I hid behind a big bush and stayed very quiet, listening for any sounds. I waited there for what felt like forever, until the forest seemed calm again. The man in the woods had scared me a lot. He didn't seem to want to steal from me or hurt me in a normal way. He acted like he thought the forest was talking to him, wanting us to stay there with him, which was really creepy. When the sun was all the way up, I knew I had to get out of there. I remembered what my dad taught me about finding my way, so I followed the sun and walked until I found the edge of the forest. Some hikers saw me and knew I needed help, so they called the rangers. I told the rangers everything, and they started looking for the man so he wouldn't scare anyone else. Sitting there, safe now, and drinking hot cocoa the hikers gave me, I felt a huge relief. But I also knew I'd never look at that forest the same way again. It wasn't just my special camping place anymore. It was where I had to be brave and get away from something really scary. Early in the morning, Alex and I stood at the start of a hidden trail, our backpacks ready for our camping trip. This wasn't just any trip. We hoped it would help us get along better after a bunch of silly arguments. The trail we picked wasn't on any maps. It was our little secret adventure, promising peace and quiet. I'm usually the one who's all about heading into the woods and exploring. That's what made Alex fall for me, I guess. But that morning, even I felt a bit nervous. This path was special, whispered about by some friends who love the outdoors. They said it led to a perfect spot by a river, where it was just you and nature. I took a deep breath, trying to let go of the worries and enjoy the moment. I could tell Alex was trying too. We needed this, to be away from everything and just listen to the rustle of leaves and the gentle sounds of the forest. We were heading to a place that was supposed to be beautiful and peaceful. I hoped it would help us find the fun and love we used to share. The forest felt like it was hugging us, making everything else seem far away. We were here to get back what we lost, surrounded by trees and the soft light of the morning. It was our chance to start fixing us, one step at a time. As the day unfolded, Alex and I got our camp set up in a small clearing near the river. The spot was as beautiful as we'd hoped, with the gentle river bubbling nearby and tall trees all around. We worked together to pitch the tent and gather some wood for a fire, not talking much, but feeling closer than we had in a while. That evening, as we sat by the campfire, the forest around us felt alive in a peaceful way. The crackling fire and the river's soothing sounds made it feel like we were in our little world. We roasted some marshmallows, and I saw Alex smile the way he used to. It felt like we were finally getting back to our old selves, enjoying the moment and each other's company. But later that night, things started to feel a bit off. I woke up to the sound of something rustling outside our tent. It was probably just an animal, but it felt strange. The next morning, we noticed a few odd things. Our boots were not where we'd left them, and some of our stuff seemed like it had been touched. We tried to brush it off as us being forgetful, but I couldn't shake a nagging feeling. The forest felt different now, less welcoming. As we hiked around the area, we found odd little signs that someone else might be out there with us. There were footprints that weren't ours, and broken branches leading away from our campsite. It was like a puzzle, making me more uneasy the more we explored. We joked about it, trying to lighten the mood, but the laughter didn't last. That night, the stillness of the forest seemed heavy, filled with unspoken questions. The noises seemed louder, more intentional. I lay awake, listening, half expecting to hear footsteps. Alex was quiet too. I could tell he was listening just as intently. We were both spooked, wondering if our hidden camping spot wasn't so secret after all. Deciding what to do next was tough. We talked about packing up and leaving, but we didn't want to let fear ruin our trip. We came here to fix things between us, and running away didn't seem like the right answer. So we agreed to stay, to not let our imaginations get the best of us. But as we settled back into our tent, the sense of unease stayed with us, a silent third presence that neither of us could ignore. That night, the forest felt more eerie than ever. Alex and I tried to sleep, but every little sound made us jump. It was pitch black outside, and the silence of the woods was broken by strange noises that seemed too close for comfort. Suddenly, we heard clear, slow footsteps outside the tent. It wasn't just rustling leaves or a small animal scampering. It was the unmistakable sound of someone walking around our campsite. We froze, looking at each other, our eyes wide with fear. The footsteps circled around the tent, then stopped. We waited, holding our breath, but the silence that followed was almost worse than the footsteps. After what felt like hours but was probably only a few minutes, I whispered to Alex, suggesting we should check it out. He nodded, and we carefully unzipped the tent, our flashlight shaking in our hands. The campfire was out, and the moon was hidden behind clouds, making it hard to see. With our hearts pounding, we stepped out into the darkness, the flashlight beam cutting through the night. The campsite was a mess. Our stuff was scattered everywhere, and there were clear signs that someone had been there. We didn't know if they were still watching us, hiding in the shadows. The fear was overwhelming, but we knew we had to face it. We couldn't just hide in the tent and pretend everything was okay. We decided to split up, thinking we could cover more ground and maybe catch sight of who or what was out there. It was a risky plan, but the tension was too much. We needed answers. I went one way, and Alex went the other, our flashlights the only thing cutting through the thick darkness. As I searched, every shadow seemed to move, and every tree looked like it could be hiding someone. My imagination was running wild, but the real fear hit when I heard Alex shout. I ran towards him, my heart racing, fearing the worst. When I found him, he was staring at something on the ground. It was his own backpack, but it had been torn open, our stuff thrown around, as if someone was searching for something. Hearing Alex's voice crack as he tried to stay calm was heartbreaking. We realized this was serious. We weren't alone, and whoever was out there wasn't just messing with us. They seemed to be looking for something, or trying to scare us off. We stood back to back, scanning the darkness, not daring to speak. The silence was suffocating, every sound amplified 1,000 times in our ears. The stress was almost too much to bear, but we knew we had to stick together and make a decision. Standing back to back, Alex and I shone our flashlights into the dark, our hearts racing. The quiet woods now felt spooky, and the silence made every little sound seem louder. Our stuff was all over the place, and Alex's backpack was ripped open. It was clear, someone didn't want us there. They were messing with our stuff, maybe trying to scare us away. We knew we couldn't just stand there. We had to do something. Whispering to each other, we decided we couldn't stay by the tent. It was too risky. We had to leave, even though it meant leaving our things behind and stepping into the pitch-black woods. Taking a deep breath, we started to move. We planned to head back to the trail we came from, even though it was really dark and the woods were creepy. But right then, we heard a loud crack from ahead. We stopped dead in our tracks. Our light showed a figure standing at the edge of where we were camping. The person was just standing there, not moving, which was super creepy. Without saying a word, Alex and I knew what to do. We turned around and ran as fast as we could, not looking back. We could feel the fear pushing us to run faster, getting away from whoever was out there. Running through the dark woods was scary, We could barely see, and we kept hearing noises, but we didn't stop. We just kept running, trying to get back to our car, to safety. The feeling that we were being followed made us run even faster, not caring about the noise we made or the branches scratching our faces. After what felt like forever, we finally saw the first light of dawn creeping through the trees. We were exhausted, our bodies aching from the run and our minds racing from the fear. But we were out, away from whatever or whoever was back at that campsite. The car was in sight now, a beacon of safety after the night's terror. We didn't speak much as we drove away, the relief of escaping mixed with a weird feeling of defeat. We left our gear, our tent, everything behind. But we had each other, and that felt like the most important thing. The silence in the car was heavy, filled with unasked questions about what had just happened and what it meant for us. As the miles rolled by, the sun rose higher, chasing away the shadows of the night. We started talking a little, not about the fear or the figure in the dark, but about us, about how this experience showed how strong we really could be together. It was strange, but facing that scare out in the woods made us see how much we relied on each other, how deep our bond was. We decided to stop for breakfast at a small diner on the way home. Sitting there, with the normalcy of morning around us, we looked at each other and really talked for the first time in what felt like ages. We shared our fears, our hopes, and what we wanted for our future. It wasn't just about the camping trip anymore. It was about us and moving forward. In the end, that terrifying night did something we didn't expect. It pulled us back together. We had been so caught up in our own stuff before, but when everything else was stripped away, it was clear how much we mattered to each other. We were a team, and we could get through anything as long as we were together. My name's Liam, and the excitement was palpable as my 3 best friends and I packed our gear into the car, ready for what promised to be an unforgettable camping trip. We were headed to the mountains, a place where the sky touches the earth, and the stars feel close enough to grasp. It was our adventure, a brief escape from the clutches of routine life, a chance to forge memories in the wild's untamed beauty. Jake, Sarah, and Mia were more than friends. They were my extended family, each of us bonded by our love for the outdoors and our shared history of past escapades. This trip was supposed to be our most ambitious yet, a journey to a secluded campsite known for its breathtaking views and serene ambiance. The drive was filled with laughter, the car's speakers blasting our favorite tunes, the road ahead promising a slice of paradise. We spoke of the hikes we'd tackle, the evening's drinks by the campfire, and the peace we'd find away from our bustling lives. However, as we got closer, the weather started to change, hinting that we might have to deal with some unexpected problems. Yet, in those initial moments, as we set up our camp against a backdrop of looming mountains and under a canopy of brooding clouds, our spirits remained high. We were adventurers after all, ready to embrace the wilderness and all its unpredictability. Little did we know, as we laughed and settled in, that the echoes of the valley would soon test the very fabric of our friendship in ways we could never have imagined. As we settled into our campsite, the mountains around us felt like giants watching over us. We got our tents up and started a fire, the flames flickering like little dancing spirits. Everything felt perfect, like we were in our own little world, far from any problems or worries. We spent the day exploring the trails nearby, laughing and joking around, feeling free. The woods were full of life, and it was like we were part of it, just 4 friends with no cares, sharing stories and making new memories. But as the evening came, the weather started to turn. The wind picked up, and the once clear sky began to fill with dark clouds. By nightfall, the air had a sharp chill, and the wind howled through the trees like it was telling us to leave. We huddled around the campfire trying to stay warm, but there was a tense feeling we couldn't shake off. It wasn't just the storm. Something felt off, like the forest had changed somehow. We decided to stick it out, thinking we could handle a bit of rain and wind. But as the night went on, the storm got worse. The tent flapped wildly, and the sound of the rain was deafening. We tried to stay brave, to laugh it off and keep the mood light, but I could see the worry in my friend's eyes. We were in over our heads, and we all knew it. That's when we heard it, the distant rumble of thunder, rolling over the mountains like an angry beast. It was clear we weren't just battling a regular storm. This was something bigger, something fierce. And there, in the heart of the wilderness, with nature's full force about to hit us, we realized how fragile our little adventure really was. Our laughter faded, replaced by the seriousness of our situation, as we braced for what was coming, hoping we'd make it through the night unscathed. The storm escalated quickly, turning the night into a blur of whipping wind and torrential rain. Our tents felt like they might rip away at any moment. We knew we had to leave or risk getting seriously hurt. In a rush, we grabbed our essentials and decided to make a run for the car, hoping to escape the worst of the storm. Barely able to see through the downpour, we stumbled through the mud and howling wind, trying to stick together. The once familiar path was now a treacherous stream, making every step a battle. Our hearts pounded not just from the run, but from raw fear. Nature, in all its fury, was showing us how powerless we really were. When we finally saw our car, crushed under a fallen tree, hope drained from us. The storm had rendered our escape plan useless, leaving us no option but to proceed on foot, seeking safety through the storm. The journey was brutal. The once familiar path was now a menacing trail, with the storm transforming every step into a perilous venture. Rain blinded us, and the wind screamed in our ears, a chilling reminder of our vulnerability. In a harrowing moment, Sarah slipped, her scream cut short by the storm's fury as she suddenly disappeared. We rushed to where she had fallen, hearts racing, dread mounting with each step. There, in a clearing blurred by rain, lay Sarah. She had fallen into a deep pit in a small clearing in the woods. It was raining hard, making everything slippery and scary. The pit was dark, and Sarah wasn't moving at all. We called out to her but got no answer, just the sound of the rain and our voices echoing. We realized then that our adventure had turned into a nightmare. In those moments, time seemed to stand still. The rain, the mud, the relentless wind, all faded into a numb void as we grappled with what to do next. We couldn't leave her there alone. Gathering every bit of strength and courage, we gently lifted her, determined to carry her back, refusing to let the storm claim her as its own. Our trek back was a blur of grief and determination. Each step was a battle, not just against nature's onslaught, but against the crushing weight of what had happened. We were a team, and even in the face of this cruel twist of fate, we leaned on that bond, drawing strength from our shared resolve to not let this tragedy break us completely. As we emerged from the storm's grip, the first light of dawn brought no comfort, only the harsh truth of our loss. The echoes of our laughter, our dreams, and our plans were now overshadowed by a profound silence, a reminder of how swiftly joy can be overshadowed by sorrow, how quickly adventure can turn to misfortune. Our journey into the valley was supposed to be a celebration of friendship, but it left us with a scar that would forever remind us of the fragility of life and the unyielding power of nature. The quiet of the morning after was heavy with sorrow. We returned to the campsite, carrying Sarah with us, the joy of our adventure now overshadowed by a profound loss. The camp, once filled with laughter and warmth, was now a stark reminder of the fragility of life. In the days that followed, our small community came together to mourn and remember. The tragedy of our trip became a somber lesson for all, a reminder of how unpredictable and powerful nature can be, and how precious every moment is. We, the survivors, found ourselves forever changed by the experience. The bond between us grew stronger, forged in the crucible of our shared ordeal, but the weight of our loss was a constant presence, a shadow that followed us, even in the light of day. As time passed, we learned to carry our grief with us, transforming it into a tribute to Sarah's adventurous spirit. We vowed to live fully, embracing each day with the awareness and respect for life that our tragic journey had instilled in us. The echoes of the valley, though tinged with sadness, also resonated with the strength of our friendship, the resilience of the human spirit. and the indelible mark of a life cherished and remembered.